Hey everybody, what is going on? This is Scott Garber back in the saddle of the Profluence Sports Podcast, where we are highlighting founders, investors, executives across the sports business landscape. Today, I'm excited to welcome two guests to the show, Pritchard and Jon Solomon, who have taken time to compile an amazing report on the state of soccer in New York and New Jersey. And it couldn't be more timely with the World Cup on our heels. Guys, welcome to the Profluence Podcast. How are we doing today? Jon, starting with you.
Doing great. Thank you for having me, Scott.
And Kira, I only start with him because we saved the best for last. So Kira, how are you doing today?
Doing well, Scott. Thanks for having us on the pod.
Super excited, guys. Well, listen, we obviously we're familiar with the Aspen Institute and the amazing work that Tom and John and the rest of the team do over there. But Kira, we're going to start with you. I'm really excited to learn more about the Laurie Tisch Illumination Fund and what you guys stand for, where you come from, and how did you land on focusing on the state of youth soccer as we start to unpack this report and get into the fun meat and potatoes?
Yeah, so the Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund is a New York City charitable foundation. We're focused really on access and opportunity for all New Yorkers. And this spans across arts, education, health, social welfare. And so our founder, Laurie Tisch, is very focused on making sure access and opportunity is centered for everyone. And so our Play to Thrive initiative, which is a 10 million multi-year initiative, is really focused on how youth sports can be a means for youth mental health and well-being.
And it's an amazing initiative, right? And as we watch this billion-dollar ecosystem of soccer, continue to expand and evolve, I think there's always this question, especially in recent articles of, how do we make sure we drive more participation and leverage some of these tentpole moments that are coming to the U.S. to continue to go ahead and deepen the roots, make them stronger, and ultimately grow a more thriving ecosystem. Kira, I'm going to stick with you, and then Jon, I'm coming on over. But, look, you guys do a lot of research, within the New York, New Jersey, area to start to go ahead and make sure you guys are placing dollars in the right place. Kira, give me a little insight as to why Aspen Institute and Jon and the narrow focus in on soccer.
Yeah, of course. We know the Aspen Institute longtime partners, and we did some previous Project Play reports with them, actually one on East Harlem a few years back. And so they were really a natural partner as we launched Play to Thrive. And even though we do our own in-house research, really to understand the actors in the space and the trends, we look to trusted partners like the Aspen Institute to really drill down and kind of test our hypothesis. But they also really bring a unique lens to the Project Play reports, specifically by centering youth voice. They do lots of surveys. Jon can speak more to that, but really centering youth within the report is so key for us. We want to hear from them directly.
And Jon, I'd love for you to elaborate on that, just sort of piggybacking Kira there.
Yeah, I mean, for us, what's really unique for us is that we had never done a sports-specific report until the State of Soccer, New York City, North Jersey report. And that's because we want all kids to participate in any sport and be physically active no matter what. We're sort of sport agnostic like that. But we saw this incredible opportunity with the World Cup coming this year, with New York City, North Jersey hosting it, including the final. How can we build some momentum and sort of look at a particular community, particular region, and understand what is the ecosystem, what are the barriers, what are the opportunities specifically in soccer for more kids to be able to access it, and not for the winning games and chasing scholarships, although we know that is a part of youth sports, but really focusing on what kids want out of their experience. So by surveying them, by doing focus groups, by talking to coaches and parents as well, and then putting together a comprehensive report that has some key findings and also some recommendations that hopefully that's useful for the region.
Which is super exciting, right? And to go sport specific and narrow down on a region, I feel like sometimes we're boiling the ocean when we talk about doing sports reports, and soccer doesn't behave like crew and crew doesn't behave like football. And so they might as well be their own independent verticals that we need to address. And so super exciting to watch this evolution, Jon. I'm curious, as you guys were collaborating, what did you uncover that surprised you the most as you were digging into this specific data data set, granted you have a lot of sort of contextual knowledge around what's going on in the space. I'm curious, were there any moments that stuck out as you were doing the research?
A couple things. I wouldn't say anything was surprising, but some things that really jumped out. One being just that why children play soccer. And it's what we hear in other communities about why they play sports as a whole, so that it sort of reaffirms. And it's for the social reasons. It's for playing with friends. It's having fun. We surveyed about 700 youth soccer players in the New York City, North Jersey region. And that was clearly the number one factor, the factors, social reasons. Developing skills, that was up there as well, but much lower winning games, much lower chasing college scholarships. But the youth soccer system is often highly commercialized and driven based off sort of what adults want and not necessarily what kids say that they actually want and need. So that was pretty interesting. Second, I would say that the infrastructure challenges in New York City, specifically, just being such a dense urban area, there just aren't a whole lot of fields to play. Very challenging. You have to find unique ways to play through mini pitches, smaller type spaces, even on roofs of buildings, in New York City. So that was interesting. And then a third thing that really stuck out to me was the value of pickup play. That has sort of become a lost art in all sports, but soccer in particular, if you go to almost any country around the world, it is a very affordable and easy sport to play. You get a ball, you find a patch of grass or dirt, you can create even some makeshift goals, and you play. In America, it's the pay-to-play model is highly structured, highly specialized, and we are losing some of that joy of soccer through pickup play. And I think that is one solution that could be really valuable, and especially for girls. We know that girls play soccer less than boys, and it came out in some of our research that pickup play could be a model to get more girls engaged.
How it just makes me so excited, right? As a budding father, a girl dad, I'm going to put that out there, and sitting at the intersection of innovation and capital as this asset class continues to grow, we often ask ourselves, what are we doing all this for, right? And like, that's what's so exciting, to shine the light back and hear the community element, not just at the adult level, right, and the fandom, but like, hey, we're starting to watch a resurgence of this, when it comes back down on the pickup side as well. Kira, I'm going to come to you. I'm always curious, like, we spend so much time doing these deep research projects, but then we have to build a bridge to how do we actually take this and implement it. And so I'm curious, like, walk us through sort of your guys, strategy post all these findings, just to give the listeners a little insight on how do we actually bring this to light and start to lean into the findings that you guys were able to uncover.
Yeah, I think that bridge from theory to practice is really important. And I think that's what we want this report to serve as, not something that will sit on the shelf, but not just for philanthropy, but government actors, pro teams, youth leagues. Like, how can this be a handbook or a guide to really, making this happen? And we want folks to put this into practice. For us at the Illumination Fund, we're kind of thinking about it through the places of play, the people of play, and the partners of play. So as John was saying, this idea of, yes, we did this report on soccer, but I think to really distill it down, it's, how do we get kids playing again in free play? And so in terms of the places, like John had outlined, New York City is a unique geography, and the report underscored this idea of soccer deserts. So there are areas in the city that don't have as many places to play, whether it's a formal court or informal space. And so the Illumination Fund is investing in partners like Street Soccer USA, which is building 26 mini pitches throughout the country leading up to the 2026 World Cup. And we're actually going to be opening a park in Queens, Ozone Park, Queens, the Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund Street Soccer Park. So that's one way we're addressing kind of the places of play. In terms of thinking about the people, coaching is so important. I mean, it's so much more than just instruction and drills. We see coaches as a way to support youth mental health and well-being. As John said, a lot of girls tend to drop out as they reach adolescence, and a lot of it is because they just don't relate or kind of see themselves in their coaches. So how do we continue to build out a diverse pipeline of female coaches? We're working with partners like Street South Bronx United, that's really thinking about female coaches and empowering girls in sports. And then in terms of thinking about partners, I mean, Gotham FC, the professional women's soccer team here in New York, New Jersey, we look at someone like them. Here's a professional team that's interested in social impact. And so one of their flagship programs, Keep Her in the Game, is an initiative that we launched in partnership with Girls Leadership, which is a sports organization or youth development organization that's actually based out in Oakland, but they're providing curriculum to keep her in the game, to really think about, as I was saying, girls' retention in sports, or how do you have positive body image or mindset as you're playing the game? So that's just a kind of a snapshot of kind of how we're thinking about Play to Thrive and kind of operationalizing the State of Soccer report.
I love it. And John, I'm going to come to you in a second. Kira, I want to stick here, and then, John, any anecdotal thoughts would be great. But, as we look at the commercialization of youth sports, we can take this in a myriad of different ways, and there's a lot of different opinions about it. One that I find quite interesting is if we look at the way that brands are showing up. Traditionally, we would look at, sporting arenas from the pro teams and really trying to leverage upstream. Now we've moved into the collegiate at the age of name, image, and likeness. And now we're starting to watch CPG brands and some of the, the laundry detergents show up at naming rights within these fields. Kira, I'm curious, as you guys push forward these initiatives, how are you bringing in the corporate side to try and educate them to go ahead and use those dollars in a way to help grow this game versus just commercialize the game and drive dollars towards these elite programs? I'll open that. Kira, I'll start with you, and then John, open that up.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Scott. And I think it's an area of untapped potential. I think going back to Keep Her in the Game that I mentioned with Gotham FC, I think what's unique kind of in that partnership, and I think it's a model that can be replicated and really expanded upon. So we came in as a foundation, as a philanthropic partner to help seed this initiative. I think philanthropy is unique in the sense that they can kind of provide that initial seed capital. We're a little more tolerant of risk than maybe a corporate, philanthropic entity would be your corporate partner. And so by providing the seed support for Keep Her in the Game, we were able to show proof of concept. In the first year, over 1,700 girls were served and nearly 100 coaches were trained in this specific methodology and curriculum addressing the girl dropout rate. And so what was wonderful is after showing this proof of concept, Dove saw this, thought this was fantastic. And so part of the jersey deal, the signing deal that they had with Gotham FC included them kind of taking ownership of Keep Her in the Game. And so Gotham was able to package that kind of within that deal. And so for us, that was like an incredible kind of outcome, because philanthropy can't be there, forever. We have to have government support come in. We have to have corporate support come in. So to me, Keep Her in the Game is kind of a perfect example of how philanthropy can partner with, pro sports, a nonprofit, and then you bring in that corporate funding to really drive impact and, support long-term good. It's not just this one-off kind of flashy, deal signing Instagram moment. Like, this is impact that we're going to see for years to come.
It's a community investment, right? As much as
Absolutely.
anything. And I think that, as we've expanded, we've become very detached from the community that we live in. And we sometimes are more aligned to the digital community that we participate in. And so it's really neat to hear a vehicle to be able to go ahead and intentionally get back and meet that community where they're at and show up in an organic way versus trying to force their way in with this idea. John, I'd love your thoughts, sort of from an Aspen lens. When we think about commercializing, how are you guys steering the ship and advising or educating these folks that want to come in and participate in youth sports to do it with stewardship and make sure we grow it responsibly?
Yeah, it's a great question. And first, a lot of credit to Tisch Illumination Fund and to the Gotham FC and the work that they're doing. Like, it's incredibly valuable what they're doing. And that's the type of work that, we want to partner with and that can really make a difference. A couple things. One, the Aspen Institute Project Play Initiative has a roundtable called 63 by 30. And this is a group of key stakeholders in different sectors across the country. We're talking about, apparel companies, pro sports leagues, media companies, public health, NGBs, like U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. There's about 20 organizations that have come together. They make a multi-year commitment to take mutually reinforcing actions aligned with a strategic plan. And it's called 63 by 30. That's sort of the rallying cry, because the federal government in recent years has set a goal of having 63% of children participating in sports, organized sports, by the year 2030. And so we've sort of had a rallying cry around that. We are championing it quite a bit. And we try to take mutually reinforcing actions and have these major companies doing their part and doing work together, but also in their own lane. So we've looked at stuff like the power of the permit, about how to use permitting as a way to get the right policies and the right education and training into youth sports programs. Looking at coach training, looking at how to just improve participation across the board. Second, but it's important to say, I think, that we don't just want kids playing organized sports. It also needs to be a quality experience, because that's how you'll recruit more kids, that's how you'll retain them, and that's how they will get all of these physical, social, emotional benefits that we know that can come from participating in sports. So Project Play, with a bunch of human rights experts, created something called the Children's Bill of Rights in Sports. And these are sort of basic principles, not legal rights, but sort of guardrails that understand and look at the idea that every child has the right to play sports. And when they're in the care of adults, the human rights they're born with need to be respected. So it's really a simple idea that all youth should have the opportunity to develop as people through sports. And so there are 8 rights: the rights to play sports, to safe and healthy environments, qualified program leaders, developmentally appropriate play, and so on. And we have over 500 organizations and people who have endorsed this. We've had municipalities that are starting to build their policies around it. Some are using grant-making criteria around this as well. Is your program following these basic principles? And if so, in what ways? And so we really view ourselves as trying to grow sports participation, but also grow the quality of it and make sure that it's an experience that kids tell us that they want and need.
I love that. And that framework and structure is the only way that we're able to build scalable solutions. And I think so often in the fragmented ecosystem of just youth sports, we watch great initiatives that fall short because there's not a foundation and a framework that's built to scale, just even across the city, never mind across a nation and across the globe as we start to think about the globalization of sport. Kira, I want to come to you. One of the things that I find most interesting is, if we look at youth sport headlines right now, there's a ton of chatter around private equity that's moved into youth sports. And we're watching big bills starting to get crafted and trying to get passed through. Sometimes we forget how to build champions at the local level. I'd love for you to speak as you roll out this initiative. What has been that process to not only get buy-in from the teams, but to get buy-in from local champions to go ahead and make sure that, these findings are turning into realities and they are creating a sustainable approach? Any tips or tricks you have for folks that are helping or shaping these programs in their local community? Would love to hear how you guys have had some success in New York.
Yeah, champions do start at the grassroots level. And I think, as John was saying, speaking to the quality of the youth sport experience, I mean, for many, it comes down, who is that coach? Who is that parent, teacher, that caring, trusting adult that identifies, maybe a youth is struggling, or, ask, hey, how did that game go? Or maybe it was something in the classroom, or, something at home. And so, we really look to our partners on the ground that are doing this incredible work day in and day out as the folks to really lead and inform our initiative Play to Thrive. And so, as I said, whether it's the coach mentorship program that we're supporting at South Bronx United, whether it's thinking about quality free play throughout the New York City park system, we're supporting City Parks Foundation in that work. So it takes some work. It takes some, pounding the pavement, so to say, especially in New York, to find those actors. But it really is kind of a breadcrumb effect. You find one, you're connected to another, you're doing that work on the ground. You also are partnering with folks like the Aspen Institute that has that kind of 30,000 foot view. And I think that's how the ecosystem really emerges, and it is supporting the community centered, assets, whether it's the people, the places, the partners, that's who we look to support and carry out our.
Love it. And so I got one more question sort of on the youth side, and then we're going to spend the back half of this talking about the one thing we can't ignore is that we're going to have the impact of 10 Super Bowls worth of attention here right in your backyard, right? So how do we use this moment and amplify what's going on? But Jon, I want to come over to you. In recent conversations, around soccer, I had the CEO, Ricardo Brasino, on from Game Fans, and they were talking about the strategy in leveraging Roblox, right? A digital community where we're getting a ton of participation with a FIFA-led product and sort of meeting that user where they're at. Jon, I'm curious, as we think about sort of Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they consume different than us. How do we think about, as an industry, meeting the end user where they're at, being the kids that we want to participate, and leveraging a Roblox type environment to bridge that digital community to getting them to a pickup field? Curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. One, we're seeing it actually that, esports, of course, is growing exponentially, and more schools are providing it. Even some, parks and rec departments are providing it around the country. And we just recently did a survey nationally of youth, and a large percentage of kids who have never played organized sports said that playing esports could actually increase their interest in playing organized sports, right? So just the idea of playing, say, Madden or NBA or NHL or FIFA or whatever, that can get your mind racing and thinking like, oh, this could potentially be a sport that I want to play. That's one thing. The second thing that I would say is that I think the youth sports space could learn a lot from the video game industry. Our number one strategy at Project Play is ask kids what they want. Sounds really simple. Not a lot of adults actually do it, whether it's parents, coaches, administrators. But think about video games and what makes video games so attractive to young people. There's incredible amounts of freedom. They are able to play at the competitive level that makes sense for them. They're able to play with their friends. There's a lot of action. They don't have to necessarily sit and wait. And oh, by the way, they don't have an adult looking over their shoulder on every single decision that they make, saying, pass, shoot, what are you doing, right? Critiquing every single thing. And so there is a lot that youth sports could learn from the video game industry by just meeting the interests and needs of kids by asking them what they want and then creating the youth sports experience around that. Maybe that means it's not as structured. Maybe some of the practices have pickup games incorporated within it, just letting kids be creative and enjoy themselves. Maybe there are just ways that we can center children's voices directly and create a better product, because they're too many of them are fleeing youth sports because it's highly competitive, too much pressure, too expensive, don't play with their friends. And so we've created sort of a misguided environment that could really be improved if we learn some lessons from others.
Jon, I think that's a life lesson, right? And as a father, I'm learning more from my kids than they're probably learning from me. And, there's a lot of different directions we could take that, but I think you are so spot on with how you put that. And sports runs parallel to life. And so as you were talking, those same reasons that people are fleeing sport, I think are the same reason that millennials are fleeing work. It's like, what are we doing all of this for, right? And so I think it's a really interesting correlation when you realize how parallel sport really is to the indicator of what happens in the rest of, the areas of life. All right, Kira, so we're going to start to bridge the gap here, right? World Cup's coming. It's, MetLife, I don't even know if I can say that, but New Jersey Stadium is going to be hosting the whole kit and caboodle. Kira, give us a little insight as to how you guys are leveraging the platform and the attention to illuminate what you're doing, to tell the right stories, and to capture all of the momentum that's going on within your backyard.
Yeah, I love the use of the word illuminate as well. So we're definitely using this moment. I mean, it is, like you said, this is the Super Bowl how many times over for the world, with the World Cup being in our own backyard. I think, though, recognizing that, again, this is a fleeting moment, and it's an incredible moment to capitalize on and really spotlight how sport as you were saying, it brings people together. People find purpose in sport. It's one of the few things left that I think everybody can rally behind, and kind of set aside differences. So how do we use this incredible moment to display that access for youth in sport and this idea of the power of free play? It can be transformative, from a youth social emotional well-being, mental health well-being, and taking this moment to really bring just a rallying cry behind centering youth in youth sport, I think, is really how we're thinking about it. And as far as I'm concerned, like, this is just the start. I mean, this is not the end of the World Cup, but this should be the beginning of, how can we transform the state of soccer, the state of youth sports, in the U.S. for years to come.
Exciting. Jon, I'm curious, from an Aspen lens, this starts the run of 3 monumental events that the globe is going to be looking at the U.S. How are you guys leveraging this for the positioning leading towards that 2030 initiative?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're thinking about that quite a bit and trying to get our partners to think about it as well, too. The pro sports leagues, the national governing bodies of sport. You've got an incredible opportunity, right, with 2026 here with the World Cup, but 2028 with the LA Olympics is a potential game changer, here in the U.S. There's going to be so much attention on so many unique sports, and I think and a very diverse set of athletes as well, too. So we are just, strongly encouraging our partners to, lean in and to be thinking about a lot of times, what is the story that we want to tell, by a particular year, by the year 2030, moving forward after that? How do we get more children participating in sports, but also making sure that's a quality experience, right? Just going back to what we talked about earlier, just playing sports in and of itself doesn't guarantee you're going to get these social, emotional, physical health, academic benefits that we want. It's around training coaches. It's around having a youth-centered system and focused about what kids want and need. It's about reducing costs. We haven't discussed that much, but that's a significant thing, given how much it costs to play sports. So all of that is sort of around the thinking of how do we grow participation, but make it quality too.
Well, and I think, like this might bleed us into overtime, but I'm okay to go there, Jon. And you touch on the cost side. And I think there's a larger sort of seismic shift happening here in how we think about developing talent and the infrastructure that was once tied to K-12 and universities. We're watching an evolution in how we think about developing. So I'm curious if you have any insights in the correlation of the development of elite talent and sort of the recreational play. Do you think that those 2 lanes will eventually run parallel to each other and kids will be able to make a choice? Or is it all going to sort of converge into a big pay to play and that just is the model we run with? Sort of curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's one of the big questions. And it's tough to know exactly where all this will be headed, but it's already gone that way quite a bit. So I'll date myself, I'm age 49, but, growing up in the 1980s and 1990s, I largely played rec sports, but I was on a travel soccer team. Travel soccer back then, though, really just meant I am traveling within the Washington, D.C. area, maybe a 1 hour radius and going to one tournament in the summer. That'd be fun. These days, you could travel every weekend, if you wanted. And there's a lot of pressure to do that. And so what's happened in recent decades is there's been less funding for the local parks and rec departments to have their own programming. They've sort of, generally speaking, there are some that still do a very good job, but generally speaking, a lot of them have outsourced it to other partners for the programming, or they just become the supplier of the facilities. Correct. The gyms and the fields and rent it out. And so it's left behind. It's what's sort of caused more parents to go the travel sports route, believing that's the model that they have to go to. So you lose those parents' capacities. You lose their dollars and resources. You lose their volunteer time to ref, coach, officiate, and you lose just numbers of kids too who go that route. And so we have a depleted, local programming these days. And what we talk about quite a bit is that we need more affordable, local, quality programming. And quality is a key piece of it too, right? That there's almost like this middle ground that's missing for parents, that there are many parents, I think, who don't want to go the highly competitive travel route, but they also look at Parks and Rec and they may perceive it accurately or inaccurately as not being good enough for their child, and it's not developing their child's skills well enough. And so, what is the middle ground where we can sort of get off this arms race a little bit and have a more sane approach to youth sports where not every child has to be in the highly competitive travel program?
Yep. And, I might be putting my foot in my mouth when I say this, but, I think all of us played athletics at a decently high level. And if you look at the sidelines, we watch that a lot of kids' journeys are fueled by their parents' actions. And so I think that, again, this could just be another sort of microscope of a larger societal problem that we deal with, and I can only speak here to the US, but, I think the underlying tones of we as humans are meant to be active creatures, and this sedentary lifestyle we know leads or has correlations back to stress and anxiety and obesity and all the things that are not healthy for us. And so I think the movement and the quality of movement and the enjoyment will start to put us in this communal type environment where we're seemingly, John and Kira, more connected than ever before, but we feel more disconnected than ever before, which I think is the question that we should be asking in sports is how do we bring that connection back in an organic and quality driven way, which candidly is what you guys are doing. And so, Kira, I'm going to come over to you as we start to turn and wind this thing down, right? You guys are doing amazing work. You published it. We're going to amplify it. What's one big takeaway that you want the listeners to leave with today about New York and New Jersey state of play where you guys are making impact?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think since we're wrapping up, I think wanting to end on a positive note, I think we've been identifying a lot of maybe of the challenges, but I think remembering, as we were speaking earlier, so much of it does come down to the work that folks are doing on the ground, the coaches, the parents, the teachers. I think everybody has good intentions, and so it's how can we support those actors in the best way to really help youth flourish and thrive and be the best that they can be. So I think the takeaway of finding the folks that are doing this great work, supporting them in the capacity that you can within the sports space youth development field, whether that's, dollars, time, a strategy, but really supporting those that are doing the good work.
I love that. And I believe these are all opportunities that we're shining the light on, although they be challenging. John, before I come over to you, I'd be remiss without saying there's a lot of people that have great intentions. I think that's come up here, but there is a gap in education. And so before you just take your idea and bring it out to the world, I think it's important to go and learn what Project Play is doing and read the case studies and the research reports that are coming out to make sure that we are working with the most up-to-date information and not just because I have a thought that I'm going to make that a reality, which we see too often in sport and the rest of the world. John, I'm going to let you bring us home, and we're going to go a little more macro here. One big takeaway, since you guys drilled down into soccer, that we should be thinking about as you guys reflect back on the research.
Yeah, I'm going to just continue to hit home that it's why kids play sports and why kids play soccer. And when we surveyed kids, it's about the joy. It's about having fun. One of the, in our surveys, we ask a lot of multiple choice questions that really helped us, pull things out and be able to understand, what the data shows. But we also asked some open-ended questions. And we asked an open-ended question about how you feel when you play soccer. And it's always so illuminating to see the responses of what the kids say. And it's joyful. It's don't feel stressed, freedom, happy, excited, motivated. And I wish more people could see that and understand why kids play soccer, why kids play sports, by listening to them and talking to them and just seeing how happy and enjoyable they are. And then the mental health benefits, the social benefits that they get out of participation. It's just incredibly valuable.
And we're going to send it home on this, guys. Soccer, which you guys drove out into, is a global language. And so I think not only does it impact us on the health side, and not only does it impact in our communities, you could get in a cab anywhere in the world. And if you can speak the language of soccer, you have billions of friends that you can go ahead and strike up conversations, even if language is the barrier. And I think as tribal-based creatures, it is so important for us to have mutual binding agents and some tether back to the greatness of what makes us human, and sport is truly one of those things. And so, Kira, John, thank you so much for taking the time, energy, and resources to go ahead and lean into being a solution to the challenges that we face within the ecosystem. Kira, you're going to bring us home. If they want to learn more about the report or the amazing work that you guys are doing at the fund, where can they find that?
You can check out our website, Laurie M. Tisch Illumination Fund. The Aspen Institute has the report online as well.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you again from Profluence. We're deeply grateful for the work you're doing and look forward to following all the future success. Talk soon, guys.
Thanks so
for having
much.
me.